So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about Puccini, and I'm going to move on to opera in a box. As some of you may know, our education department does a legitimate opera in a box that we send out to the school programs. I'm doing the illegitimate, redheaded stepchild production of that this evening. And I'm calling it La Bohème in a box. So I'm going to tell the story of the opera with some common, not so common objects. Our opera takes place in the apartment of 4 students who are living together. We have a poet, represented here by our quill. Then there is a painter, represented here by our painter's tape.
18th century! I'm not being historically accurate here.
But Marcello and Rodolfo are the 2 main male characters. Then there is a poet, not a poet, he's the poet, the philosopher. So he's into books, and there's also, with my little metronome here, a musician. So these 4 guys are living in a squalid apartment in Paris, and they are struggling. If you think back to your college days, eating ramen noodles. They didn't have ramen noodles, but they dealt with their equivalent of ramen noodles. So they're living in an apartment. They are making their living as best they can. In the very first scene, it's Marcello and Rodolfo. So you've got them, and they're freezing cold. And they decide that they need to find something to heat the apartment. There's a stove. They think about breaking up a chair, and then Rodolfo says, no, let's just burn my play, because it's not that good anyway. So they set that on fire and try to get some warmth out of that. Then the musician comes in, and he's got tons of food, and he's very happy. He got this job working for an eccentric Englishman. He was hired to play the piano until this parrot died. So then, while they're having their big celebration, the landlord happens to come knocking on the door. The landlord, of course, being represented by my wallet. So the landlord comes in, and he wants his rent, and they, of course, are not going to spend Channard's money on the rent because they want to go out. It's Christmas Eve. They want to go out to the Café Momus and have a good time. So they managed to trick the landlord into talking about his romantic conquests. Now he's an older man, he's married, and they get him to talk about his love of women and his philandering, etc., etc. And then, of course, mock shock. They're like, how dare you? We can't have you in our home. You're horrible and awful. Get out. So he leaves without them giving him money. Then the guys decide we're going to go off to the cafe and we're going to have a good time. It's Christmas Eve. And one of the neighbors shows up. She's Mimi, and her candle has mysteriously gone out, and she wants to get a light. So she introduces him to herself and says, my candle's gone out. They start talking. He's instantly in love with her. He sings an aria talking about his life, and I'm a poet, and I write, etc., etc. She is a seamstress, and she does embroidery. So then they have this great big duet, and then finally they go off to the Café Momus. And this is the big scene where there are going to be chorus people everywhere. Don't step in them as you leave. There are waiters around. So we move right from Act 1 into Act 2, and there's all the people around, and don't step in the chorus as you leave. So they're dining, they're having a good time, and lo and behold, Marcello's old girlfriend, Musetta, shows up. Now, Musetta is a party girl. She's glamorous. All of Paris loves her. They can't wait to see, what outfit she's wearing, what shoes are she wearing, etc., etc. Who's she with? And she's dating an older, rich gentleman who, for convenience sake, I'll just use my wallet again. Which is convenient because one of the traditions in opera, the same character who plays Benoit, the landlord, usually also plays Alcindoro in Act 2. Musetta causes a big stir, she sings a big aria, everybody fawns all over her, She manages to give the bill for all of the students' table to the old guy that she's with, and he kind of passes out at the end. We move into then Act 3, and a little bit of time has happened. Marcello, where is the tape here? Hello, fun with props. Anyway, Marcello and Musetta are back together. They are living in outside of town. And Mimi and Rodolfo have been having some problems because Mimi is unfortunately dying of consumption. What we would call tuberculosis now. Back then it was consumption. She's dying. Rodolfo knows he can't take care of her. So he wants to sort of help her out, and he thinks that if he leaves her, she'll go find a rich guy to live with. So he has left her. He's staying now at the inn where Musetta and Marcello are. He shows up. Mimi comes in, and she wants to find them. So there's this big touching scene with all of them. She has a scene with Marcello, and she says, I don't know what's going on. Rodolfo is angry and bitter and mad all the time, and blah, blah, blah. So then she goes to hide because Marcello has come out, Rodolfo has come out, sorry. And then they start, Rodolfo tells Marcello why he's really left. And he says, I can't take care of Mimi anymore, she's dying. Mimi says, what? I'm dying? So she overhears him, then she ends up having a coughing fit. They realize she's there, and the three of them have a little bit of a scene. Then, of course, Musetta comes in, and there's a fabulous quartet. And Marcello and Musetta start fighting again. As I move them over here, they're fighting. He calls her a witch. She calls him, you know, a sign painter, mocking his abilities, etc., etc. So they're all mad and annoyed. These people are happy, and they decide that they will stay together until the spring, and then they'll part. And then we move into the fourth act, and everybody's back in the garret. It's springtime, and Mimi has, of course, gone away. She's living with a rich vicomte. And we've got the four guys again back in the garret. Then all of a sudden, that's all going on, and Musetta shows up saying, oh my God, Mimi is here. She's really, really sick. So Mimi comes back. Everybody realizes how sick she is. And they all try to pull together to help her. And Chonard, the philosopher, goes out and sells his coat. Musetta goes out and sells her earrings. They're all trying to get money for a doctor and medicine for her. Marcello and Musetta at that point in time, they're always fighting, but Marcello finally says to her, he says, you know, Musetta, you're a really good woman. So despite the fact that I've depicted her as Vanity Fair, she really does have a heart of gold. I should bring out, you know, Good Housekeeping or something like that. She really is a wonderful character. So then everybody goes away and leaves Mimi and Rodolfo alone. They have their sort of tender moments, and Mimi really knows that it's time for her to go, and she's not going to be around much longer. And they relive their first meeting, and then she sort of falls asleep. Rodolfo thinks it's just asleep. Everybody else comes back with the muff, they warm her hands, and then ultimately Mimi passes away. It's very sad. And I have to say, no matter how many times I've been in Bohème, no matter how many times I've seen it, no matter how many times I sit there in rehearsal and I say, I'm not going to cry, I'm not going to cry, I'm not going to cry. Damn it, I cry. So it is one of the most, the opera ends with Rodolfo screaming out Mimi's name. It's one of the most poignant, most touching moments in opera. And, you know, I've been doing this since 1988. I've been in the business since then. I still cry at that point. So it's very easy to see why this is one of the most popular and one of the most performed operas. And I certainly hope that you will come out and enjoy it. And does anybody have any questions?